Welcome to the Innovator's Journey. I'm Jonathan Winter. Today we're exploring a question that lurks behind every business strategy, every government policy, and every career plan. The question is, what is the future of human work in the coming age of artificial intelligence? Over the past 2 years, I've spoken to thinkers and practitioners across medicine, engineering, education, the law, and beyond. And in this special compilation episode, you'll hear extracts from my interviews with these remarkable changemakers. It's a conversational journey through disruption, augmentation, practical steps we can all take, and ultimately to the question of what it is that makes us uniquely human, and what that means for all of us who seek to do productive work in the years to come.
You're listening to The Innovator's Journey, a podcast about the lives and careers of creative people, technology, and the future of work, with your host, Jonathan Winter.
We begin this episode with a simple observation that the pace of change since the release of ChatGPT has been breathtaking. I spoke with Ross Smith, an engineering manager whose career has paralleled the history of computing.
I actually learned to program on punch cards. We stored the programs on ticker tape.
At Microsoft, Ross was close to the epicenter as the explosion of generative AI moved the ground beneath us all in 2022. I spoke to him a few months later.
The way I look at it is we have this opportunity where, because this technology is so new and it's moving so quickly, we all start at the same place. So everyone has an opportunity to kind of learn and get good at it. And it's not going to be the AI that replaces you. It'll be your neighbor who's really good with the AI that replaces you.
Environmental entrepreneur Abil Ma is a representative of a younger generation of changemakers.
I came to realize that I was kind of like an innovator or an entrepreneur when I was young.
This was a skill he needed early in his career because it wasn't long before Abil faced the disruption of AI.
When I started to work in PwC as an entry-level audit trainee, I already heard in conferences that part of our job will be replaced. Eventually, when I moved into consultancy and when I studied law, exactly the same happened as well. So I think that entry-level jobs, especially in the professional sector, will certainly be replaced to a certain extent.
This raises big questions about how young professionals will learn their trade when the traditional tasks of apprenticeship have gone away. But with technology and an entrepreneurial spirit, they may be readier than we think. In his case, Abil's response was to latch onto a problem he cared about, waste disposal, and set out to fix it, hiring his own father along the way. It's a great story. But whether you're at the start of your career or at the pinnacle, the pace of change can be unsettling. When I spoke with climate engineer and Cambridge academic Sean Fitzgerald, he too could see his role being rewritten.
The role of research is going to change with AI, for sure. In other words, there will be more opportunities to not just rely on solving difficult equations, which are the nuts and bolts of some of these climate models today, but actually using AI, which therefore is a completely different approach to how we might do climate forecasting, weather forecasting. So I see that being a massive opportunity.
Whether you see it as an opportunity or a threat, disruption is coming. Maureen Dunn, a cognitive scientist and neurodiversity advocate, puts it bluntly.
I think we're also in a unique time in history where cognitive work is going to be taken over by machines, right? And where specifically AI is going to be transforming the way we work, the way schools educate. I mean, really every profession, every facet of our daily lives.
If cognitive work is being taken over by machines, does that mean physical work is immune from change? Not according to eye surgeon John Ellis, whose fascinating interview included the observation that just as we get really good at something, that might be exactly the time to hand it over, if not to a machine, then to another human.
Professor David McLeod said 20 years ago that when an operation has become that successful, it's time for doctors to pass it on to other professions. When an operation is almost mechanically predictable. It is no longer uncertain, and it's time to do the decent thing, pass that on to others, because you and I as doctors are paid, said he, to think about things that are difficult, to make the difficult diagnosis and so on.
So even without the advent of robotics and AI in medicine, John Ellis sees the need for resource-constrained health services to shift some tasks to less expensive humans, leaving doctors to operate at the top of their license. The challenge these innovators are posing for all of us is this. You and I also need to operate at the top of our license. That means identifying and using our uniquely human skills and searching out opportunities for efficiency and automation, starting with those repetitive tasks that inspire us least. The hope that this could help make our work better was most immediately expressed by Bill Drayton, the renowned social entrepreneur, when I asked him, what about the loss of jobs?
Look, replacing repetitive stuff, for heaven's sakes, who wants to do that? Then we can focus on helping one another be ever richer, wiser people, individually and collectively.
Clearly, there will be massive disruption as a result of AI, and that includes job losses. But according to these innovators, the headline is not AI or humans, it's AI and humans. Collaboration, not automation, is the superpower. Today we collaborate with ChatGPT. Tomorrow we each manage a team of AI agents. Here's data scientist Beth Rudden.
Take the robot out of the human and measure how much more effective you are when you do automate or augment yourself with this technology so that you can then measure what is the benefit of using this technology.
Ross Smith offers a practical example.
I can interact with the AI and say, hey, based on the last 5 meetings, can you give me an agenda for this upcoming meeting? And it'll give me a list, and I'll look at that list and say, okay, yep. Ooh, no, not that one. We don't need that. Yep. Oh, wow, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Right, and so again, the combination of the human plus the machine, it's much faster, right? It comes up with that agenda in 10 seconds.
Like Ross Smith, most of my guests have been resolutely glass-half-full people. They're positive about the future, but they're also aware of the significant risks, both the risks of harm and the risk of unequal benefit. What should be a great equalizer could turn out to be another driver for inequality. It was a point well made in my remarkable and moving conversation with the law professor Anup Surendranath. He advocates and innovates to widen access to justice in India, and reminded me of the need to widen access to technology too.
Technology has a big role to play, provided we can address issues of fairness and equity in who gets to access this technology, right? I think there's a very clear urban and rural divide in terms of who is getting to use mobile phones and internet in India. And data needs to become a lot cheaper for it to be a lot more democratized.
So now we have this vision of collaboration between people and machines, and we can see it's not far off. It's not science fiction. The practical question is, how can we each get on and reshape our work so that we can thrive in this unknown future? We all want to have a say, but much may depend on where we work. 3 years on from ChatGPT, people everywhere are experimenting with new tools, but many organizations are struggling with how to change. So now it's organizations that need to catch up. The interesting thing is, I'm not sure technology is the biggest challenge. I think it may be our collective ability to change old ways of working. Here's leadership and agility coach Lisa Adkins.
I work with leadership teams now, all of whom are facing an unrecognized identity crisis. Because the ways they've been working don't work anymore. The new ways are not quite in their reach now, even though they exist. New ways are not quite in their reach yet, and they feel a little bit like they're in limbo.
Lisa Adkins goes on to describe what it looks like when leaders and organizations, or even nations, get this right. They see the way to adopt AI and transform your workforce is not with traditional change management programs, but by evolution. Not massive top-down plans, just useful steps, then learn, adapt, repeat.
We bring smart people together and we say, okay, how can we create the thin slice of something that is useful here, something that starts to address the issue with the known facts, not in abstract, but with the known facts on the ground right now where we are sitting. And then we do that thing, whatever that thing is. And then we inspect it and we say, do we want to build on this? Or do we want to try something else because it didn't work as well as we thought? And so I think it's humans iterating together at a global scale.
Let's assume your organization finds a way to let people experiment and learn like this. They've given you new tools, put in place some guidelines, and let you loose. Or maybe you're already your own boss. What can we do then to take the future into our own hands? Data scientist and former archaeologist Beth Rudden says first we need to take a cold, hard look at our current work, analyse the individual tasks that make up our jobs, and start by removing things we don't like. It's a simple but powerful exercise that I recently heard described as task archaeology.
I would ask everybody to go out to ChatGPT, and if you're a teacher, ask ChatGPT to list 50 things that a teacher does on a daily basis. Figure out which one of those that you don't like to do anymore. Think about how you can automate them, and then you're automating the tasks or automating the redundancy out of what you're doing on a daily basis.
If task archaeology sounds like an arduous project, remember that the reinvention of work isn't something that you will do in one go, and it could even be enjoyable. Here's Beth Rudden again.
Play, is really what I would say to get to a point. And you asked what I do is I play. It's not that I'm trying to stay current, but I have figured out how to be curious about the newer technology. And I do that work that I described where if I have a frustration where I'm doing something repetitively, like trying to figure out time zone conversion, I will go see if there's a tool out there that I can use, like Calendly, to be able to put my calendar stuff together so that I don't have to do time zone conversion.
Let's step back and recap so far. We know work is changing fast, and that there are good reasons for each of us to be proactive in shaping what we do and how we do it. As individuals, we can do that through task archaeology, and just by being curious and having a go. As organizations, we can also benefit from that playfulness and experimentation by using agile methods. We also know that collaboration, not automation, is the superpower. AI should be a clever companion, enhancing, not replacing us. But to make that partnership with technology work, we need to answer the exam question. What is it that humans are uniquely good at, and that we should therefore cultivate? I asked each of my guests that question, and gradually a picture emerged. That process of peeling away the predictable and the mundane leaves us humans with something intriguing. A vision of people at our best, getting stuff done in a real local context.
My grandfather's business was very good at cutting through rocks.
Bridge designer Theodore Zolli first learned the messy realities of his trade at his grandfather's knee.
So I've always been around large-scale civil engineering projects, but also this idea about building things in places that are difficult.
Ted has spent decades thinking about what can and cannot be codified and put in a how-to manual and taught to budding engineers.
If you were to say, how many different ways can we design an arch bridge? It's pretty limited. If you say, how many different ways can we erect an arch bridge? This is a very different question. And in different circumstances, different techniques work remarkably well or remarkably poorly. And I would say a lot of what I've done in my practicing career is to try to learn from not just the finished work, but not just the artifact, but the difficulty we had in getting the artifact in place or getting it out. I think the uniquely human part will be this know-how, the sensibility, this learned experience of how to fabricate and erect bridges will be brought back into design. And so the human piece in all of that is really a know-how piece that I think is craft.
This idea of craft is about knowledge embedded in experience, in community, and in the mud and sweat of real life. It's fluid, local, and improvisational. And that local context is not accessible to AI, which relies on well-defined data. Ted Zolli isn't alone in seeing this. Lissa Adkins sees something similarly intangible in her work as a leadership coach.
What is happening is that the people are immersed in their context and they're struggling with something. And because I am working at the systemic and pattern level with them, and because I'm in touch with something, I don't even know where things come from. Sometimes a question comes out of the ether and my only job is to be courageous enough to ask it. And if I ask it, sometimes that creates an immediate shift in what the group is doing and what's possible for them. So there's something about the relationship system and how it works that AI won't touch for quite a while. We as human beings don't understand how it works, but it is palpable and real.
What is it, this human capability? Is it intuition? Or maybe you could call it judgment. Here's my guess at why it's special. I think it's situated in our bodies as well as our minds. It involves all our senses. Maybe it's closer to making music or art than to science. It involves our differences and unpredictability. For some tasks, those human characteristics are weaknesses, but for others, they're irreplaceable. Materials scientist Admir Masic, one of the pioneers of self-healing concrete, is a big advocate for education. He described the value of emotions that arise when people learn together in a classroom.
What you have in your brain and how these connections are made and how emotions are built around the concept, I think will be difficult to substitute through machine learning.
And the result?
When you put at the table educated people, I think magic happens, and it's a foundation for peace building, for innovation, for every aspect of your life, I think becomes better.
Koen Timmers, an education technologist at the forefront of thinking about AI in education, perhaps surprisingly also sees something special when teachers are viewed as sources of inspiration, not just education.
A teacher is noticing when students are not happy, when they are upset, stressed, and all kinds of different emotions are involved. It is a human factor, and I do think that students will always appreciate to be taught by human beings for exactly that reason.
Eye surgeon John Ellis combines the idea of professional craft when faced with complex conditions with the proposition that the human connection may, by definition, be fundamental to good healthcare, because the care is something that can't be delegated to a machine.
If the healthcare outcome has been poor, but the humanity and the human connection has been excellent and genuinely honouring to the person involved, I think good healthcare has occurred. And a lot of patients do understand that it is not possible to guarantee an outcome.
Here's Maureen Dunn again. She identifies some of the skills that neurodivergent people bring to the table.
Like, very unique visual spatial skills, nonlinear thinking, connecting dots between different fields and different pieces of data, and these sort of leaps of intuitive, creative insight. Very, very difficult for AI and machine learning to replicate.
So, what have we learned? We've learned that human work is not going away anytime soon, and that it's not AI that's going to put you out of a job, it's your neighbour who knows how to use AI. But we've also seen, I think, that artificial intelligence isn't just changing work, it's changing us, our roles and therefore our sense of self, how we create, and maybe even what we value in other people. We don't know what the distant future holds, but what my guests showed us through bridges, classrooms, courtrooms and clinics is that the foreseeable future doesn't belong to those who do more faster. The future belongs to those who collaborate, who bring with them a sense of purpose, who use every sense to listen to their context and then work with insight and judgment, with emotion, with artistry, in fact, with craft. And at the heart of all this lies the power of human connection. As Bill Drayton reminds us, you'll find humanity at our best in those small, deliberate acts of empathy.
When you help your 6-year-old who's just hit her brother who's 4, and you put your arm around her and say, well, you must have been pretty upset when you did that. That is helping her practice conscious, empathy-based living for the good. And then you ask, well, how do you think your brother felt? And why do you think he reacted the way he did? What do you think we can do now? Anybody can do that. This is not astrophysics.
I like that. In the end, the answer is not complicated. And the future is in our hands every time we choose to lead with curiosity, with empathy, and because we genuinely care. Thanks to my guests, whose full interviews are available wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks to you for joining me. Now it's your turn to shape the future of work. Over to you. Thank you for listening to The Innovator's Journey with me, Jonathan Winter. If you enjoyed today's story, do share it with your friends and colleagues and subscribe to make sure you hear future episodes. This podcast was recorded in Riverside, edited and transcribed automatically in Descript, with algorithmic music from SoundDraw and artwork generated with DALL-E. The rest was human.